Gaurang Sundar Gurudev. Let's start with the prayers. Om Agyanmiti Mirandasya Gunanjana Shalakya Chakshuram Militam Mena Taksmai Sri Guruve Namah Krishna Chaitanya Manavishram Sthapitam Mena Bhutale Shram Rupam Sada Mayam Dadati Sampadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsa Sri Rupam Sagar Jatam Shagar Raghutanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padanam Shagar Lalita Vishakhanvitam हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्ते तप्त कांचनम गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वंशकल्पतरु कृपा सिंधु विजय पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासुदेव गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे all glories to his divine grace Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada all glories to his grace Gaurang Sundar Gurudev. So today is the 12th day of Bhakti Kala Carnival and we are going to recite Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada 1972 edition, that original version of Bhagavad Gita which Prabhupada had given. So, who all coordinators have that original Bhagavad Gita with them, please read from hard copy only. And who all still don't have, so I have pinned our website where we have uploaded the original Bhagavad Gita by Prabhupada. In Sangha group, I have pinned the website. So from that website, you can open and read. So for the 108 important slokas, we will read the purport. Please hear carefully. Purports we have to read only for the 108 important slokas. I will keep sending what all the important slokas are in our Sadhu Sangha group. For the remaining slokas, you have to read the Sanskrit and then the English translation. Okay, clear for everyone. And when important slokas will come, then read the purport. Okay, and everyone, please participate in the recitation because we have to complete it. Like every year, we start from the early morning and it takes till late night. But this time we have started after Gurudev session. Gurudev said to keep Bhagavad Gita only. So we have to recite and please everyone participate actively. We have to complete it. Uh, Maybe till late night, but we have to complete. So Krishna Das Prabhuji, you want to start first?
Hare Krishna Mataji, yes Mataji, I can start.
Okay. So first sloka itself is important sloka in first chapter. So read the purport, and for the
Okay,
remaining slokas, you read slokas and translation. Okay.
yes Mataji. Okay Mataji, Hare Krishna Guru, Dhanvat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Hare Krishna everyone. I'll first start with the prayers. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदां मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांस्य श्रीगुरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सार्वभौतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितां च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्ते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावन विश्वानस्ते देवी प्रणमामि हरिवांश कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधु पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो विष्णु हरे कृष्ण विष्णुभूतले श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी वासुदेवी दिशराणि जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर सारी गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम हरे हरे Chapter 1, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Text 1, Kshetrastra Uvacha, Dharmaksetri Kuruksetri Samaveta Yuyutsabaha, Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvat Sanjaya. Translation, Kshetrastra said, O Sanjay, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? Purport, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjun, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita that all that is contained in all other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjay, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on his planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmaksetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjun. Dhritarashtra, the father of Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjay, "What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?" He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in the field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship. Even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjun and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjay was a student of Vyas, and therefore by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjay was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belonged to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's sons, Duryodhan and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhishthir would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the war and Kurukshetra, apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Text 2. Sanjay Uvacha Drishtva tu Pandavannikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravid. Translation. Sanjay said, "O king, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and began to speak the following words." Text 3. Paschaitam Pandu Putranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Sishyena Dhimata. Translation. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad. Text 4. Atra Sura Maheswasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha. Translation. Here in this army, there are many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhim and Arjun. There are also great fighters like Yudhan, Virat, and Drupad. Text 5. Tritaketus Chekitana Kasirajas Cha Biryavan Purujit Kuntivoses Cha Sebhyas Cha Nara Pungavaha. Translation. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Tritaketu, Chekitan, Kasiraj, Purujit, Kuntivos, and Sebhya. Text 6. Yudha Manyuscha Vikranta Uttamoses Cha Viryavan Saubhadra Draupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharatha. Translation. There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamosa, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. Text 7. Asmakam ta bisistva yetan nibodha dvizottama Nayaka mama sanyasya samgyartham tan bravimite. Translation: O best of the Brahmanas, for your information, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Text 8. Bhavan Bhismascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitagyaya Aswathama Vikarnascha Saumadattis Tathaivacha. Translation: Their personalities like yourself, Bhisma, Karna, Kripa, Aswathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta, called Bhuriswara, who are always victorious in battle. Text 9. Anye cha bahavah sura madarte tyakta jivita nana shastra praharana sarve yuddha visaradaha. Translation: There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Text 10. Aparyaptam tad asmakam balam bhisma phirakshitam paryaptam twidam etesam balam bhima phirakshitam. Translation: Our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhisma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Text 11. Ayanesu cha sarvesu yatha bhagam avasthita bhismam eva viraksantu bhavantah sarva evahi. Translation: Now all of you must give full support to grandfather Bhisma, standing at your respective strategic points in the phalanx of the army. Text 12. Tasya sanjanayan harsam kuru vridhaha pitamahah simhanadam binadyotshay sankham dharmo pratapavan. Translation: Then Bhisma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch very loudly like the sound of a lion, giving Duryodhan joy. Text 13. Tataha sankascha bherayascha panavanaka gomukha sahasaiva sasabdas tumulo bhavad. Translation: After that, the conches, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Text 14. Tataha svetar hayar yukte mahati syandane sthito mahathava pandavaschaiva dibhyo sankho pradadham matu. Translation: On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjun, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conches. Text 15. Pansajanyam Rishikesu Devadattam Dhananjayaha Pondram Dadhmo Mahasankham Bhimakarma Vrikodhara. Translation: Then Lord Krishna blew his conch called Pansajanya, Arjun blew the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch called Pondram. Text 16 to 18. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kuntim Putra Yudhishthiraha Nakulaha Sahadevascha Sughosa Manipuspakau Kasyascha Parameswasaha Sikhandicha Maharatha Trishtadyumna Viratascha Satyakis Chapar Rajita Drupado Draupadeyascha Sarvasas Prithvipate Saubhadarascha Mahabahu Sankhan Dadhmu Prithak Prithak. Translation: King Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch, the Ananta Vijay, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sughosa and Manipuspaka. That great archer, the king of Kasi, the great fighter Sikhandi, Trishtadyumna, Virat, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as the son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective consuls. Text 19. Saghoso Dhartarashtanam Hidayani Vyadarayat Navascha Prithivim Chaiva Tumulobhya Nunanadayam. The blowing, translation: The blowing of these different consuls became uproarious, and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Text 20. Atha vyavasthitan dristva Dhartarashtran kapi dhvajaha Prabhritti Sastra Sampate Dhanur Udyamya Pandavaha Rishikesam Tadavakyam Idam Aha Mahipate. Translation: O king, at that time Arjun, the son of Pandu, who was seated in his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows, looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra. O king, Arjun then spoke to Rishikesha, Krishna, these words. Text 21 to 22. Arjuna Vacha Senayor Upadhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayome Achyuta Yapad Etan Nirikseham Yadhu Kaman Avasthitan Kair Maya Saha Yodhavyam Asmin Ranas Samudyami. Translation. Arjun said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great battle attempt. Text 23. Yotshyamanan aviksheham ya etetra samagata dharta rastrasya durbuddhir yuddhe priya chikirsavaha. Translation. Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Text 24. Sanjay Vacha Evam Ukto Rishikesho Gudakeshena Bharata Senayor Upadhayor Madhye Sthapayitva Rathottamam. Translation. Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharat, being thus addressed by Arjun, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. Text 25. Hismadrona Pramukhata Sarve Samsa Mahiksitam Uvacha Partha Paschaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. Translation. In the presence of Bhisma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, Rishikesha, the Lord, said, Just behold Partha, all the Kurus who are assembled here. Text 26. Tatra pasyat sthitan Partha Pitrinatha Pitamahan Acharyan Matulan Bhratrin Putran Potran Sakhimstatha Swasuran Suhridas Chaiba Senayor Ubhayor Api. Translation. There Arjun could see, but in the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and all his father-in-law and well-wishers all present there. Text 27. Tan samikshya kaunteyaha sarvan bandhun avasthitan kripaya parasyavisto visidannidam abravit. Translation. When the son of Kunti, Arjun, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text 28. Arjun Uvacha Dristvemam swajanam Krishne hiyutsam samupasthitam sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parisusyati. Translation. Arjun said, My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Text 29. Bepathuscha sarire me roma harsascha jayate Gandhivam samsate hastat tvakchaiva paridahyate. Translation. My whole body is trembling and my hair is standing on end. My bow, Gandhi, is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. Text 30. Nacha soknamyavasthatum brahmativacha me manaha nimittani sapaschami viparitani kesava. Translation. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Text 31. Nacha shreyo nupasyami hatva swajanam athave na kangshe vijayam Krishna nacha rajyam sukhani cha. Translation. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Text 32 to 35. Kim no rajyena govinda kim bhoger jivitena va yesam arthe kangsitam no rajyam bhoga sukhani cha ta ime vasthita yuddhe pranam tyaktva dhanani cha acharya pitara putras tathaiva cha pitamaha matula swasura potra syala संबधिनश्च तथा एतान्न हन्तुमिच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्य राजस्य हेतु किं न महि कृते निहत्य धार्तराष्ट्रान् न का पृथ्वी स्या जनार्दन. Translation: O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield. O Madhusudan, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them? Though I may survive, O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Text 36. Papam evashrayadasman hatvaitan atataina tasman narha vayam hantum thartarastran swabandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva suhina syama madhava. Translation: Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Texts 37 to 38. यद्यप्य एतेन पश्यन्ति लोभपहत चेतसा कुलक्षय कृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकं कथं च ज्ञेयम् अस्माभिः पापाद् अस्मान् निवर्तितुं कुलक्षय कृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन. Translation: O Janardan, although these men overtaken by greed see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? Text 39. Kulaksaye pranasyanti kuladharma sanatana dharmi naste kulam krishnam adharmo abhibhavati uta. Translation: With the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. Text 40. Adharmabhibhavat Krishna प्रदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रीषु दुष्टासु वार्ष्णेय जायते वर्णसंकरः. Translation: When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Text 41. Sankaro narakayaiva kula gnanam kulashcha patanti pitaro yesam lupta pindo daka kriya. Translation: When there is increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. Text 42. Dosair ete kulagnanam varna sankara karakai utsadyante jati dharma kula dharmascha saswata. Translation: Due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family traditions, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. Text 43. उत्सन्न कुल धर्मानां मनुष्याणां जनार्दन नरके नियतं वासो भवत्यत्यनुसृम. Translation: O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Text 44. Ahobata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yadraja sukhalovena hantum swajanam udyata. Translation: Alice, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Text 45. Yadi mam apratikaram apastram sastrapanayah dhartarashtra ranehanyus tanmeksemataram bhavet. Translation: I would consider it better for the sons of Dhritarashtra to kill me unarmed and unresisting rather than fight with them. Text 46. Sanjay Uvacha एवम् उक्त्वार्जुनः सङ्ख्ये रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसृज्य ससरं चापं शोकसमिग्नमानसः. Translation: Sanjay said, Arjun, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to His Grace Guru. Thank you, Gurudev, for giving me this opportunity to recite these verses. All glories to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please call us as Gurudev. Mataji, can I come? Are you there?
Yes, Mataji, start.
जी माताजी. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं. वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुश्रीयुक्तपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं सग्राजितं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सद्वैतं सवधूतं परिगणसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपदं सहगण ललिता श्रीशाखान्वितंश्च. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपति गोपेश गोपिका कंत राधा कंत नमस्ते. तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये. पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी अति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, राम राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, राम राम हरे हरे. Thank you so much, Gurudev, for giving me this beautiful opportunity to recite. Mata, which it is written in Hindi, like which number it is? Okay, sorry, chapter 2, verse 1. Okay. Sanjay Vacha Tam Tatha कार्पण्याविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णकुलेक्षणम् विषीदन्तम् इदं वाक्यम् उवाच Madhusudana. Sanjay, translation. Sanjay said, seeing Arjun full of compassion and very sorrowful, his eyes brimming with tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following words. Text 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kutvastva Kashmalam Idam Vashameshamupasthitam Anarya Justam Avargyam Akriti Arjuna. Translation. The Supreme Person, Bhagavan, said, my dear Arjun, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all benefiting a man. They are not at all befitting a man who knows the progressive values of life. They do not lead to higher planets, but to infamy. Text 3. Klebyamashma gama partha netat tva upapadyate क्षुद्रं हृदय दूर्बलं त्याक्तोत्तिष्ठ परन्तपा. Translation. O son of Pritha, do not yell to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such pity weakness of the heart. Give up such pity weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Text 4. Arjuna Vacha Katham Bhishmam Aham Shankhe Dronam Cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyochyami Pujarha Arisudana. Translation. Arjuna said, O killer of Madhu Krishna, how can I counter attack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? Text 3. Gurun ahatva hi madhusu mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bheksyam apiha loke hatvarta sham kamastu gurun ihaiva bhu bhunjya bhogan.
Rudhira pradidhan. Translation: It is better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though they are av- a- avaricious, they are nonetheless superiors. If they are killed, our spoils will be tainted with blood. Text 3. Ne nachid vidma ka kataranno garyo yadva ve jayema yadivano jayayu yan iva hatva na jijivisham te visthita visthita प्रामुखे धर्तराष्ट्र. Translation: Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. The sons of Dhritarashtra, whom if we killed, we should not care to live. We should not care to live. And now standing before us on this battlefield. Now, no, again I'm reading. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. The sons of Dhritarashtra, if the sons of Dhritarashtra, whom if we killed, we should not care to live, are now standing before us on this battlefield. Text 7. Karpanyadoshu apatasvabhavah prichhami tvam dharma samudhacheta yachreyas nischitam bruhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prappanam. Translation: Now I'm confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Purport: By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In Garga Upanishad, the perplexed man is described as follows: Yova itad aksharam garge iv avidi vashmalokat preti shakarpana. He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human and who thus quits this world like the cats and dogs without understanding the science of self-realization. This human form of the science of self-realization, this human form of life is a most valuable asset for the living entity who can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is a Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life. The Karpannas or miserly persons waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc. In the material conception of life, one is often attached to family life, namely to wife, children, and other members on the basis of skin disease. The Karpanna thinks that he is able to protect his family members from death, or the Karpanna thinks that the family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also. Being intelligent, Arjun could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were causes of his perplexities. Although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him, still, on account of miserly weakness, he could not discharge the duties. He is therefore asking Lord Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, to make a definite solution. He offers himself to Krishna as a disciple. He wants to stop friendly talks. Talks between the master and the disciple are serious. And now Arjun wants to talk very seriously before the recognized spiritual master. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of Bhagavad-GITA. And Arjun is the first disciple for understanding the Gita. How Arjun understands the Bhagavad-GITA is stated in the Gita itself. And yet foolish mundane scholars explains that one need not submit to Krishna as a person, but to the unborn within Krishna. There is no difference between Krishna's within and without. And one who has no sense of this understanding is the greatest fool in trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. Text 8. Nahi prapashyami mama panudya chokam uchchosanam indrayam avapya bhuma ashapatnam radham rajasam suranam api chadipatyam. Translation. I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to destroy it even if I win an unrivaled kingdom on the earth with sovereignty like that of the demigods in heavens. Purport. Although Arjun was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of the principles of the religion and moral codes, it appears that he was unable to solve his real problem without the help of the spiritual master. Lord Krishna, he could understand that his so-called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which oh yes, sorry, yes, thank you. Text 9. Sanjay Vacha Ivam Yukva Rishikesham Gurakesha Param Tapa Na Yotasya iti Govindam Yuktva Tushnim Babhuvaha. Translation. Sanjay said, having spoken thus, Arjun, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Text 10. Tam uvacha hrishikesha prahashan iva bharata shenayo ubhayurmudhe vishidhantam idam vacha. Translation. O descendant of Bharata, at that time, Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjun. Text 11. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashochanan Vashochatsvam Ragyavadamscha Bhashashi Gatasu Nagatasumscha Nanushuchanti Pandita. Translation. The blessed Lord said, while speaking learned words, you mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Purport. The Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, you're talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is body and what is soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition, as it will be explained in the later chapters. It will be clear that knowledge means to know matter and spirit, and the controller of both. Arjun argued that religious principles should be given more importance than politics or sociology. but he did not know that knowledge of matter, soul, and supreme is even more important than religious formalities. And because he was lacking in that knowledge, he should not have posed himself as a very learned man, as he did not know, as he did not happen to know, as he did not happen to be a very learned man. He was consequently lamenting for something which is unworthy of lamentation. The body is born and is destined to be vanquished today or tomorrow. Therefore, the body is not as important as the soul. One who knows this is actually learned, and for him there is no cause for lamentation, regardless of the condition of the material body. Hare Krishna, Mataji, Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Sri Krishna, Das Gurudev. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm ending it here. Panchakalpatarubhascha kripasindha bhyavaccha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much, Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Gurudev, for giving me this golden opportunity. Thank you so much. Hari Bol, Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Sri Krishna, Das Gurudev.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Should I continue? I mean, should I come? Am I audible, Mataji? Okay, Mataji. 2.12 say I have to start, right? Okay, Mataji. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिते नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवती पाश्चात्यदेशकारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौरभक्तवृंद मम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददति सम्पदान्तिकं वन्देहं श्री गुरु श्री Shri Guru Vaishnava Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Savina Raghunathanatam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagalam Shri Vishakanatam हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्ते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी पुष्पानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधु भयोच पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे 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 कृष्ण हरे हरे भगवद गीता चैप्टर 2 श्लोक 1 2 न त्वम् एवाहं जातु नाशं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपः न चैनं न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयम् अतः परम् Translation. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Purport by His Divine Grace is Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Vedas, in the Katha Upanishad, as well as in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer of innumerable living entities in terms of their different situations according to individual work and reaction of work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is also by his plenary portions alive in the heart of every living entity. Only saintly persons who can see within and without the same Supreme Lord can actually attain to perfect and eternal peace. नित्यो नित्यानां चेतनश्चेतनानां एको बहुनां यो विददाति कामान् तम् आत्मस्थं ये अनुपश्यन्ति धीरस्तेषां सन्ति शाश्वती नेतरेषाम् Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. The same Vedic truth given to Arjuna is given to all persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned have but if but factually have but a few fond of knowledge. The Lord says clearly that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally individual beings, and that the Lord is eternally the maintainer of the individual living entities, both in their conditioned as well as in their liberated situations. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Individual Person, and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal associate, and all the kings assembled there are individual eternal persons. It is not that they do not exist as individuals in the past, and it is not that they will remain eternal persons. They individually they individually existed in the past, and their individuality will continue in the future without interruption. Therefore, there is no cause of lamentation, no cause for lamentation for anyone. The Mayavadi theory that after liberation, the individual soul separated by the covering of Maya or illusion will merge into the impersonal Brahman and lose its individual existence is not supported herein by Lord Krishna, the supreme authority, nor is a theory that we only think of individuality in the conditioned state supported herein. Krishna clearly says herein that in the future also the individuality of the Lord and others as it is confirmed in Upanishads will continue eternally. This statement of Krishna is authoritative because Krishna cannot be subject to illusion. If individuality is not a fact, then Krishna could not have stressed it so much even for the future. The Mayavadi may argue that the individuality spoken of by Krishna is not spiritual but material. Even accepting the argument that the individuality is material, then how can one distinguish Krishna's individuality? Krishna affirms his individuality in the past and confirms his individuality in the future also. He has confirmed his individuality in many ways, and impersonal Brahman has been declared to be subordinate to him. Krishna has maintained spiritual individuality all along. If he is accepted as an ordinary conditioned soul in individual consciousness, then his Bhagavad Gita has no value as authoritative scripture. A common man with all the four defects of human frailty is unable to teach that which is worth hearing. The Gita is above such literature. No mundane books compare with the Bhagavad Gita. When one accepts Krishna as an ordinary man, the Gita loses all importance. The Mayavadi argues that the plurality mentioned in this verse is conventional and that it refers to the body. But previous to this verse, such a bodily conception is already condemned. After condemning the bodily conception of the living entities, how was it possible for Krishna to place a conventional proposition on the body again? Therefore, individuality is maintained on spiritual grounds and is thus confirmed by great acharyas like Sri Ramanuja and others. It is clearly mentioned in many places in the Gita that the spiritual Gi- it is clearly mentioned in many places in the Gita that this spiritual individuality is understood by those who are devotees of the Lord. Those who are envious of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no bona fide access to the great literature. The non-devotee's approach to the teachings of Gita is something like bees licking on a bottle of honey. One cannot have a taste of honey unless once one opens the bottle. Similarly, the mysticism of Bhagavad Gita can be understood only by devotees and no one else can taste it, as it is stated in the fourth chapter of the book. Nor can the Gita be touched by a person who envy the very existence of the Lord. Therefore, the Mayavadi explanation of the Gita is most misleading presentation of the world truth. Lord Chaitanya has forbidden us to read commentations made by the Mayavadis and warns that one who takes to such an understanding of the Mayavadi philosophy loses all power to understand the real meaning by the Lord. The plurality of the individual soul and of the Lord is an eternal fact and is confirmed with the Vedas as mentioned above. Mataji, next. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, sloka 1 3. Tehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yagvanam jana tata dehantara prapti dhiras tatra namakyati. Translation. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change, purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every time, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. The individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on the account of death, neither for Bhishma nor for Drona. For whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering, according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have either spiritual bodies in the next life or at least in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So, in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul, and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira or most sober man. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of the spirit soul cannot be entertained on ground of the spirits on the ground that spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as a fragmental portion. Such cutting into different individual souls could make the supreme cleavable or changeable. Again, is the principle of the supreme soul being unchangeable, as confirmed in the Gita. The fragmental portions of the supreme exist eternally, sanatana, and are called. Mataji, can you move up? As confirmed in Gita, the fragmental portion of the supreme exists eternally, sanatana, and are called kshara. That is that they have tendency to fall down into material nature. These fragmented portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same, fragmented. But once liberated, he lives an eternal life in bliss and knowledge with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The theory of reflection can be applied to the Supreme Super Soul, who is present in each and every individual body and is known as Paramatma, who is different from the individual living entity. When the sky is reflected in water, the reflections represent both the sun and the moon and the stars also. The stars can be compared to the living entities and the sun or the moon to the Supreme Lord. The individual fragmented spirit soul is represented by Arjuna, and the Supreme Soul is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. They are not on the same level as it is. as it will be apparent in the beginning of the fourth chapter. If Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then the relationship of instructed and instructed becomes meaningless. If both of them are deluded by the illusionary energy Maya, then there is no need of one being the instructed and the other instructed and the other being other the instructed. Such instruction could be useless because in the clutches of Maya no one can be an authoritative instructor. Under that circumstances, it is admitted that Lord Krishna is the supreme Lord, superior in the position to the living entity Arjuna, who is forgotten soul deluded by Maya. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-4. Matra Sparshas Kaunteya Shridos Nasukadukadaha Agamapayino Anitya Samti Tikshashva Bharata. Translation: O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course, or like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons, they arise from sense perception, O son of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Purport by His Divine Grace, Ulsi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January to February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is a religious principle of the Kshatriya, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion only one can liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties, therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-5. Yam hina Vyat- व्यतयन्ति एते पुरुषर्षभा समदुःखसुखं धीरं यो मृत्यत्वया kalpate. Translation: O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress is steady in both in certainly eligible for liberation. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-6. Nashato नाशतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टो अन्तस् अन्योस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः. Translation: Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. These seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-7. Avinashi tu tadviddi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasam avya avyayash avyayasyasya na kashit kartum arhati. Translation: Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-8. Antavanta ime deha nityasyoktah शरीरनः अनाशिनो अप्रमेयस्य तस्माद् युध्यस्व भारत. Translation: Only the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and the eternal living entity is subject to destruction. Therefore, fight, O Sion of Bharata. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sloka 1-9. ye enam vritti, ye enam vritti hantaram, yes chainam manyate hatam, ubhau ubhau tauna vijanito nayam hantina hanyate. Translation: He who thinks that the living entity is the slayer or that he is slain does not understand. Does not understand. One who is in knowledge knows that the self slays not, nor is slain. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, sloka 220. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भवितवा न भूय अजो नित्यं शाश्वतो अयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. Translation: For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Purport: By his divine grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental particle of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called steady or kutastha. The body is subject to six kinds of transformations. It takes its birth in the womb of mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death, and because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, existing, and primeval, and that is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of their body, we see the history of birth, etc., of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree or nor anything material. The soul has no product, either the byproducts of the body, namely children, or also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of the particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor chain. Therefore, the soul is free from the six changes of the body. In Katana Upanishad, also we find a similar passage which reads: "Na jayate mrite va vipaschin, nayam kutaschin na va babhuva कश्चित् अजो नित्यः शाश्वतो अयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे." This is from Katha Upanishad 1.2.18. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad Gita, but here in this verse there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart, where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that there is daytime. Therefore, daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of soul. This consciousness of the this consciousness of the soul. Mataji, little bit up. Yeah, yeah. This consciousness. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teaching of Bhagavad Gita could be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu Atma, and the supreme super soul, the Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in Katha Upanishad in this way. Anur Anyan Mahato Mahayan Atmas Janto Nihito Guhayam Tam Akratu Pashyati Vitashoko Dhatu Dhatu Prashadan Mahimanam Atmanaha. 1.20. Both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires as well as Lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super souls also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he required to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Vancha kalpataru prasya kripa sindhu bhayavasha pavitana pavane pravashi namo namaha. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to His Grace Gauranga Sundar Gurudeva. All glories to His Grace Gauranga Sundar Gurudeva. All glories to His Grace Gauranga Sundar Gurudeva.
Suram Mataji, you can come next. Suram Mataji, are you there? Hare Krishna, Suram Mataji, are you there? If not, then Pran Priya Mataji, you can come. Hare Krishna, Pran Priya Mataji. Tukadas Prabhuji, are you there?
जी माताजी।
Okay, Prabhuji, you continue.
जी माताजी। हरे कृष्णा। जय श्री प्रभुपाद। जय हिज ग्रेस गौरांग सुंदरदास गुरुदेव। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धं ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकथामहं ददातिस्पदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपतिकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगुणं रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादां सगुणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपी कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिने इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौराणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम राम हरे हरे। Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 21. Vida vina shinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam katham sa purusha partha kama katayati antikam. Translation. O Path, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, unborn, eternal, and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Chapter 2, text 22. वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृहाणि नरोपिराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि. Translation. As a person puts on the new garments, giving up old ones, similarly the soul accepts the new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Change of the body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even some of the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept the continuous change of body, which appears from the childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in the previous verse. The transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of super soul. The super soul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul, as one friend fulfills the desire of the another. The Vedas, like the Mundak Upanishad as well as the Swetsitarswar Upanishad, compare the soul and the super soul to the two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the bird, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruits of the tree, and the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two friends, although they are the same in the quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still master and the other is servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another, or from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body. But as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender into the Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Kathopanishad and Swetsitavar Upanishad confirms this. Samne samane vrikshe puruso nimagno nisaya sochati muhaya manaha justam yada pushyatya anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vita shoka. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with the anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, who is the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all the anxieties. Arjun has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad-GITA from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to heal their bodies in the righteous fight, so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from the various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of the bodily reactions and promoted to the higher status of life. So there was no cause for the Arjun's lamentation. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 23. Ninam chidanti sastrani ninam dahati pavaka na chinam paledeyanti apo na shoshyasi maruta. Translation: the soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All kinds of the weapons, swords, flames, rains, tornadoes, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as the fire weapons. But formerly, there were other weapons made up of all different types of material elements. Firearms were counteracted by the water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of the tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original soul. The Mayavadi, however, cannot describe how the individual soul evolved from the ignorance and consequently become covered by the illusionary energy. Because they are atomic individual souls, Sanatana, eternally, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sparks of the fire, although one in the quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. In the Vara Puran, the living entities are described as the separated parts and parcels of Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad-GITA also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from the Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Text 24. Achedyo ayam adhyo ayam akaledyo asosya evacha nitya sarvagata sthanu achalo ayam sanatana. Translation. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither born nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Chapter 2, text 25. अव्यक्तो अयम अचिन्त्यो अयम अविकारो अयम उच्यते तस्माद् एवं विधि वैनम नानुसूचितम अर्हसि. Translation. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, immutable, and unchangeable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Chapter 2, text 26. अथ चीन नित्य जातम नित्यम वामन्यस्य मृतम तथापि त्वं महाबाहो नैनं सोचितुं महर्षि. Translation. If, however, you think that the soul is perpetually born and always dies, still you have no reason to lament, O mighty Am. Chapter 2, text 27. जात्यस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्युर्ध्रुवं जन्म मृत्युश्च तस्माद् अपरिहार्ये अर्थे न त्वं शोचितुम् अर्हसि. Translation. For one who has taken his birth, death is certain, and for the one who is dead, birth is certain. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, the cycle of birth and death is revolving, one after another, without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in the human society for keeping law and order. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relative, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of the sinful acts of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Chapter 2, text 28. अव्यक्त्यादीनि भूतानि व्यक्ताध्यात्मत्यानि भारत अव्यक्त्यानिधानन्य एव तत्र का परिदेवना. Translation. All the created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifested again when they are annihilated. So what need is there for the lamentation? Chapter 2, text 29. आश्चर्य पश्यति कश्चित् एनाम् आश्चर्यवत् वदति ततो हैवच्चन्यम् आश्चर्यवश्चैनम् अन्यशृणोति श्रुताप्य एनाम् वेद न चैव कश्चित्. Translation. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Chapter 2, text 30. Dehi nityam avadhyo ayam dehe sarvasya bharata tashmat sarvani bhutani natam suchitam arhashi. Translation. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and the teacher Bhishma and Drona will die in the battle. On the authority of Sri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body. Not that there is no such thing as a soul, or that the living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in the terms of sanction of the Lord and not the capriciously. Chapter 2, text 31. Sarvadharma api chaveksha na vikampitumahasi dharmadhyadiyuttascharyo anyat kshatriyas na vidyate. Translation. Considering your specific duty as a kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for the hesitation. Chapter 2, text 32. Yadaichaya chopana panam swargadvaram aparvaratam sukhinam kshatriya partha labante yuddham idrasam. Translation. O Parth, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. Chapter 2, text 33. Atha chetvam imam dharmayam sangramam na karishyasi tatha swadharman kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Translation. If, however, you do not fight this religious war, then you will certainly incur some sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Chapter 2, text 34. Akirti chapi bhutani katha sishyanti te avyayam sambhavitasya chakirtira maranada atirichyate. Translation. People will always speak of your infamy, and for one who has honored, dishonor is worse than death. Chapter 2, text 35. Payatrana duparatam mayastante tva maharatha yesham cha tvam bahumato bhutva yashyasi lagavam. Translation. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you a coward. Chapter 2, text 36. Avasya vadamscha bahuna vadishyanti tvahitaha nindantosya samarthya tato dukhataram no kima. Translation. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Chapter 2, text 37. Hatova prapsyasi swarga jitva va mokshase mahim tasmad utishta panteya yuddhaya krutanishchayah. Translation. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planet, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up and fight with determination. Chapter 2, text 38. Sukha dukhe same krutva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yukjashva niva papa vapshasi. Translation. Do though fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. Chapter 2, text 39. Esati abhimihita sankhye buddhi yoge tu imam shunu buddha yukto yaya partha karma bandhana prahashyasi. Translation. Thus far I have declared to you the analytic knowledge of Sankhya philosophy. Now listen to the knowledge of yoga, whereby one works without fruitive result. O son of Parth, when you act by such intelligence, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. Chapter 2, Text 40. Neha vikrama nasosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Translation. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and the little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of the fear. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes failure. But any work begun in the Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in the Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears the permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of the 2%. Whereas in the material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. Ajamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of Lord. There is a nice verse in this connection in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tyaktya swadharmana charanambucha hare bhajanna papo aha pakotha aha patet tato yadi yatra kwa vabhatram abhut amushya kim ko vata apo apachatam swadharmatah. If someone gives up the self-gratificatory pursuits and works in the Krishna consciousness, then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Bhagavatam 1.5.17. Or as the Christians say, what profit a man if he gain the whole world, yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in the Krishna consciousness carries the person again to the Krishna consciousness even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of the great cultured Brahmana or in the rich aristocratic family. That will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in the Krishna consciousness. Chapter 2, Text 41. Vyaushayatmika buddhiha ekeha kurunandanaha bahusakha anantascha buddhayo avyavsayinam. Translation. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of Gurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A strong faith in the Krishna consciousness that one should be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called as a Vyavsayatmika intelligence. The Chaitanya Charitamrita states, Shraddha Sabde Vishwas Kahe Sudra Nishchaya Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Kritahaya. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of the Krishna consciousness, he need not act in the relationship to the material world with the obligations to the family tradition, humanity, or nationality. Fruitive activities are the engagement of the one's reaction from the past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in the Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for the good results in his activities. When one is situated in the Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subjected to the dualities like the good or bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This statement is automatically achieved by the progressive Krishna consciousness. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on the knowledge Vasudevam Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, by which one comes to the knowledge perfectly that Vasudeva or the Krishna is the root of all manifested causes. as the water on the root of the tree is automatically distributed to the leaves and branches. In Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. If Krishna is satisfied by one's actions, then everyone will be satisfied. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and can guide him to act in the Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in the Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna. One should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master as follows: Yasya prasade bhagavad prasado yasya prasadadna gati kutopi dhyayam suvansasa yasasya tisandhya vande guru shri charanarvindam. So by satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for his mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectful obeisances unto him, my spiritual master. The whole process, however, depends on the perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body, not theoretically but practically. When there is no longer chance for the sense gratification manifested in the fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by the various types of the fruitive acts. Thank you so much, Gurudev, for giving this opportunity for me, for my own purification. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Shri Swaram Das Gurudev. Hare Krishna. Next, please come.
Hare Krishna Gurudev Ramas Kanani Skaranga Santagadev Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नाम नमस्ते सरस्वती देव गौरवाणी प्रचारणे नमस्ते शून्वादि भाषाते सतारणे ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं भूतले स्वयं रूपकदाम्यहं ददाति सपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सगजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सद्वैतं सवाधुतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विश्वभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to His Grace Parama Sundar Gurudev, all glories to His Grace Parama Sundar Gurudev, all glories to His Grace Parama Sundar Gurudev. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 42 to 43. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadyanti avipashitaha veda veda rata partha नन्याद अस्ति वादिनः कामात् माना स्वर्गपरा जन्म कर्म फलाप्रादं क्रिया विशेषा बहुलं भोगैश्वरा गतिं प्रति. Translation: Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of such sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. Chapter 2, verse 44. Bhoga Ishwara Prasakta Nam Taya Partha Chetasam Vyavasatmika Buddhi Samadho Evana Vidhiyate. Translation. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says Samag adhiyate asmin atmatva yathatmayam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is called samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyment, nor for those who are bewildered by such temporary things. Chapter 2, verse 45. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjana Nirvando Nitya Sattva Stho Niryoga Shema Atmavan. Translation. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject matter of three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for the gain of safety, and be established in the self. Purport by His Grace, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All material activities involve action and reaction. In the three modes of material nature, they are meant for the fruitive results which cause the bondage in the material world. Vedas deal mostly with the fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to the position of transcendental plane. Arjuna, as the student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jigyasa, or questions to the supreme transcendence. On the supreme transcendence, all the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after the creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then the chance of spiritual realization is offered in the forms of Upanishads, which are a part of Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita is a part of fifth Veda, namely Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress, cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities become free from anxiety regaining regarding gain or loss. The transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 46. Yavan artha udapane sarvataha samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijnanataha. All purpose that are served by small pond can at once be served by the great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purpose of the Vedas can be served by one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The ritual and sacrifice above mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedic literature are to encourage the gradual development of self-realization, and the purpose of self-realization is stated in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 15.15. The purpose of studying Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So, self-realization means understanding Krishna, who is the eternal and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of a living entity with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The living entities are parts and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. Aho bata swa pacho to gariyan yaj jihvagre vartate nama tubhyam. Tepos tapas te juhuvo sasnur arya brahmana chur nama granati yete. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born in a low family like that of a Chandala dog eater, is situated in the on the highest platform of self realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals, and studied Vedic literatures many times after taking his bath at all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. So, one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of Vedas without being attached to the rituals only. And must not desire to be elevated to heavenly kingdoms for better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for a common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic ritual and the injunction of Vedanta and the Upanishads. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and the resources to execute the purpose of Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of Vedic literature is served, however, by chanting the holy name of the Lord as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of the fallen souls. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Parakshanda Saraswati, why the Lord was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying the Vedas, Vedanta philosophy. The Lord replied that his spiritual master found him to be a great fool, and thus he asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and the knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna. The highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. कर्मण्य अवधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्म फले हेतुर्भुर मा te sango sata akarmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to doing your duty. योगस्था कुरु मन्य संगम त्यक्ता धनंजय सिद्धि असिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा samatvam yoga uchyate. Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. Chapter 2, verse 49. दूरेण हि अवकर्णं कर्म बुद्धियोगा धनंजय बुद्धौ शरणम अविच्छा कृपन्न फला हेतवः. O Dhananjaya, rid yourself of fruitive activities by devotional service and surrender fully to that consciousness. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. बुद्धियुक्तो जहातिह उभे सुकृता दुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युजस्व yoga karmasu kaushalam. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions in his life. Therefore, strive for yoga, Arjuna, which is the art of all work. कर्म जम बुद्धि युक्ता ही फलम त्याक्त्वा मनिष् न जन्म बंधा वीर्णा मुक्ता padam gachanti anamayam. The wise engaged in the devotional service take refuge in Lord and uh, and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way, they can attain the state beyond the miseries. Chapter 2, verse 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishati tada gantasi virvedam nirvedam Shrota Vasya Shrutasya cha. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. Chapter 2, verse 53. Shruti vipariti pannate yada स्थास्यति निश्चला समाधाव अचला बुद्धि तदा yogam avapyasi. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of Vedas, and it is remained in the fixed in trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. Chapter 2, verse 54. Arjuna Uvach Sthita Pragyanasa Cha Bhasha Samadhi Sthaya Keshava Sthita Dihi Kim Prabhashrita Kim Asita Vijeta Kim. Arjuna said, what is the symptom of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? Shri Bhagavanuvach प्रजाहति यदा कामान सर्वान् पार्था मनोगतान् आत्मानि एवात्माना तुष्टः स्थिता प्रज्ञानस्तदोच्यते. The Blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Chapter 2, verse 56. दुःखेष्व अनुद्विग्ना मनः सुखेषु विगातः स्पृहा विता raga bhaya krodha sthita dhir munir uchyate. Translation: one who is not disturbed in spite of threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called sage of steady mind. Chapter 2, verse 57. Ya sarvatrana bhishnehaas tat prapya subha shubham nabhi nadanti na dveshti tasya pragya parishti sthita. One who is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor laments when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Bhagavad-Gita chapter 2, verse 58. Yada samharte chayam kurmo ananganiva sarvataha indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragya pratishtata. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is to be understood fully situated in knowledge. Chapter 2, verse 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam raso apyasya param drishva nivartate. Translation: the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense object remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Purport. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to seize the sense enjoyment. The process of restriction of sense enjoyment by the rules and regulations is something like restricting deceased person from certain types of eatables. A patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for the eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of niyama, asana, pranayama, pratihara, dharana, dhyana, etc is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of Lord Krishna in the course of advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has taste for dead material things. Therefore, are there for less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good if one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for the pale things. Chapter 2, verse 60. यतो हि अपि कौन्तेय पुरुषया विपाश्चिता इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथिनि हरन्ति परसभं मानः. The senses are strong and impetus. O Arjuna, they forcibly carry the mind away, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. तानि सर्वाणि सम्यक् युक्ता आसिता मत्परः वासे हि वासेन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठता. One who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Verse 62. ध्यायतु विषयः पुंसा संगस्तेषु प्रजायते संगात् संजाय कामान tasmat krodho abhijayate. While contemplating with the objects of senses, one develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Purport. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires. While contemplating with the objects of senses, the senses require real engagement, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement to the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. And the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal. As a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young pure devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi. But Haridas easily passed the test because his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna, as illustrated in the above mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all the material uh, sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for the spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling his senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail. For the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his senses. Chapter 2, verse 63. Krodhat bhavanti sammohat smriti vibraha, smriti vibhat buddhi nashat pranashyati. Translation. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down to the material pool. By the development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects. So, as a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain the perfect stage of renunciation. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, an impersonalist, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the Supreme Being being impersonal, he cannot eat, whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid eatables. A devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So, after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus, everything becomes spiritualized and there is no danger to downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas a non devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist, therefore, cannot enjoy life due to the artificial renunciation, and for this reason, the slight agitation of mind pulls down into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising from the material point of liberation, falls again due to his not having support in spiritual service. Chapter 2, Shloka 64. Raga Dvesha Vimuktaistu Vishayan Indriyascharan Atma Vishayar Vidhyatma Prasadan Adhigachanti. Translation. One who can control his senses by practicing the regulated principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance to a fall down. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the same sensual plane, because of being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to the sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. But if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within the control, because he acts under the direction of Krishna. The consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord. Uh, this consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which a devotee can achieve in spite of being attached to the sensual platform. Chapter 2, verse 65. प्रसादे सर्व दुःखानां हानिर अशोपाजायते प्रसन्न चेतसो हि आशु बुद्धि पर्यावस्थिताते. For one who is so situated in divine consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such a happy state, one's intelligence soon becomes steady. नष्टि बुद्धिर अयुक्तस्य च न च युक्तस्य भावनः न च भाववयक्तः शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्. Translation. One who is not in transcendental consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady intelligence, without which there is no possibility of peace. How can there be any happiness without peace? इन्द्रियाणं हि चारतं यन्मनो अनुविद्यते तद् अस्या हरति प्रज्ञायं वायुर्नावम् इवाम्भसि. As a boat on water is swept by strong wind, even one of the senses of the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Tasmad yasya mahabaho निर्घृतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियान्निद्रायार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from the objects is certainly of steady intelligence. या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्मात् जागृति संयमी यस्यं जागृति भूतानि सा निशा पाश्यतो मुनि. Translation. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self control, and the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective stage. There are two classes of men. The one class is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and other is the introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. The activities of introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for the for the persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of materialistic man. The sage feels the transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas a man in material activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of variety of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy, sometimes distressed in the sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to such material happiness and distress. He goes on with his self realization activities undisturbed by the material reaction. Apuryaman achala pratishtham samudram apaha pravishtanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravinshati sarve sa shantim apnoti na kamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like river into the ocean, which is ever being fulfilled, is always still, can only achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Vihaya kaman ya sarvan pushmams charati nihe spiraha Nirmano nirahankaraha sa shantim adhigachanti. Translation. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Chapter 2, verse 72. Esha Brahmi Sthitihi Parta Nainam Prapya Vimuhyanti Sthivasyam Antakale api Brahma Nirvanam Richati. That is the way of spiritual or godly life, after attaining which man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, he can enter into the kingdom of God. All those who Srila Prabhupada, all gracious grace, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak and serve. I'm very sorry if I committed any offense. Yes, Mataji, thank you. Mataji.
Hey, Hare Krishna, Mataji. So I have completed second chapter, Mataji. Philosophy. Yes. Hare Krishna, everyone. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Sri Gauranga Samvas, Glories. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ram Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Ram Hare. Chapter 3, verse 1.
Arjun Uvacha Jasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardane Tatkim Karmani Gaurem Neogyasi Keshava. Translation. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Uh, Mataji, next verse, or I will open it once. Just a minute. You are screen sharing. So, okay. Verse 2. व्यामीश्वरेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहया विस्मे तत् एकं वद निश्चित्य येन सिद्ध्योऽहम् आप्नुयाम्. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. Chapter 3, verse 3. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokismin Vidanashta Pura Prokta Managnaga Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Translation. The blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by his devotional work. Chapter 3, verse 4. Na karmanam anarmamban nesha karmanam purushasante na cha sanyasanat eva siddhim samadhi gachati. Translation. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Chapter 3, verse 5. Nahi kaschit kashnam api jatu tishtati akarma karyateha avasya karma sarva prakriti jarnaguna hai. Translation. All men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Chapter 3, verse 6. Karmendrani samyama ya aste manasamran Indratran vimuttatma mityachara sauchyate. Translation. One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Chapter 3, verse 7. Yastava indrani manasa nyama bharate arjuna कर्मेन्द्रिया हि कर्म योगम आसक्त सर्वसिष्यते. Translation. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. Chapter 3, verse 8. नियन्तं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो अकर्मणः शरीरायत्र पीचते न प्रसिद्धेत अकर्मणः. Translation. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. Chapter 3, verse 9. Yagna tat karmano nyatra लोकयं कर्म बन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचरः. Translation. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, o son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. Purpose. Since one has to work even for simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Yagna means Lord Vishnu or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yagno Vahe Vishnuha. In other words, in the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yagnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yagna as it is described in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at this for satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashma trup vata purshena paraparam Vishnur aradhyate. Vishnu Puran 3.8.9. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but will also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. Chapter 3, verse 10. Sayagna parajasasva purvocha prajapitah anena prasvidyama esova sattva istakam dukha. Translation. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, Be thou happy by this yagna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you all desirable things. Chapter 3, verse 11. Devana bhavrayante nena te deva bhayavantu vaha परस्परं भव्यत श्रेय param avyapastah. Translation. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. Thus, nourishing one another, there will be reign general prosperity for all. Chapter 3, verse 12. Ishtana bhogani vo deva dasyante yagna bhavitah tera dattana pradayaveo yabhunte sena eva sah. Translation. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yagna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Chapter 3, verse 13. Yagnasistena santo मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषाहि मुज्यन्ते तव अगम पाप Yapachintayatmakaranata. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Anada bhavanti bhutani pranyada anasambhavah yagnata bhavati prajano yagna karma samuddhabhavah. Translation. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rain. Rains are produced by performance of yagna, sacrifice, and yagna is born of prescribed duties. Purport. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana, a great commenter on the Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows. Ye indradi angatayaswatim yagna sarvesram Vishnum abhachaya tachesam Ashnanti tena tadhe antram Sampadyanti te santah Sarvesrasya bhaktah Sarva kilvisir anandi kala vidritya Atma bhuvana Atmana bhuvana Pratibandhe kare nikliha Prapir Vimuchanti, the Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yagna Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all the sacrifices, is the master of all demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body, serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, etc., are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas directly sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. While Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person is in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self realization. On the other hand, who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action. And this prepares the next body to resemble hawks and dogs to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Food grains are vegetables. All vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eat different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, etc. And the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of the big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices, therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yagna, specifically the Sankirtana Yagna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. Chapter 3, verse 15. Karma bharmodbhavam vidhi brahmakstra samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagne pratisthitam. Translation. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Chapter 3, verse 16. Evam pravitram chakrama naudnu वर्तयतयः अज्ञातुरिन्द्रियरामो मोघं प्रतः Translation. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow his prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin. For a person delighting only in the senses lives in vain. Chapter 3, verse 17. यस्तव आत्मरतिरेव स्यद् आत्मतृप्ताश्च मन्वः आत्मेन एव च न सन्तु न तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते. Translation. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illuminated in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Chapter 3, verse 18. Neva tasya krate narto न कृते नेह कश्चन न चस्य सर्वभूतेषु काश्चित् अर्थवयप्रसर. Translation. A self-realized man who has a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Chapter 3, verse 19. तस्मात् अश्कत सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचरः असक्तो है अचरं कर्म परम अपनोति पुरुषः. Translation. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment one attains the supreme. Chapter 3, verse 20. कर्मणेव हि संसिद्धम् अस्ति तजानकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहणमेवापि संशयं कर्तुम् अर्हसि. Translation. Even kings like Janak and other attain the perfectional stage by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Chapter 3, verse 21. Yadyat achrati srestha tat tat eva tarojana sayat kar parmanam kurute lokas tad anuvarvate. Translation. Action is performed by a great man, common men, follow in his footsteps and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts. All the world pursues. Purport. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly even before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, that is scripture, to reach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Samhitaha, and similar others are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king of the executive head of a state, the father, and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Mataji, next verse. Chapter 3, verse 22. नामे प्रतास्ति कर्तव्यम त्रिषु लोकेषु किंचन नानवापतम अव्यपात्यम व्रत एव च कर्माणि. Translation. O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. Bhagavad-GITA, chapter 3, verse 23. यदि हे अयं न वर्तेयं जात कर्माणि यन्त्रदिद मम वर्तमानुवर्तने मनुष्य पार्थ सर्वसः. Translation. For if I did not engage in work, O path, certainly all men would follow my path. Chapter 3, verse 24. उत्सेदेयुरमेमलोक न कर्यं कर्म चेत् अहम् शङ्कर्ष च कर्त स्वयं उपान्यम इम पराजः. Translation. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. Chapter 3, verse 55. Satta karmani advedmoso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryadvidyam tata shaktas Chekrusuloka Sangranam. Translation. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, similarly the learned may also act but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. Na buddhi vedam janayada ajnam karma sanginam josyeta sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. Translation. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. Chapter 3, verse 27. Prakriti karma kriyamanani guneha karmani sarvasa ahankar vibhuddhatma kartaham ityamanyate. Translation. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are and actually carried out by the nature. Tra- The purport. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be the working on the same platform. But there is a wide gulf of difference in their. Mataji, can you show the whole purport? Okay, thank you. Working on the same level may appear to be the working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Soul, Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the system of his nations. He does not know that his gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature. Under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is the factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. Chapter 3, verse 28. तत्वे तु महाबाहो गुणकर्मे विभाग्यो गुणकुणेषु वर्तन्त इति मत्वा न सहजते. Translation: One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitative results. Chapter 3, verse 29. प्रकृतिर्गुणसम्मूढः सजन्ते गुणकर्मसु तन् विदो मन्दन् प्रतिसेन भिन्न विचल्यत. Translation: Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Chapter 3, verse 30. मय सर्वाणि कर्माणि सनस्यध्यात्मचेतस निराशिर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगत ज्वरः. Translation: Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with mind intent on me and without desire for gain and free from egoism and lethargy, fight. Chapter 3, verse 31. Ye me matam idam nityam anustayanti manavah shraddhavanto nashyanto muchyante tepi karma biha. Translation: One who executes his duty according to my injunctions and who follows his teachings faithfully, without envy, becomes free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Chapter 3, verse 32. यातव एदत् अभुष्यन्तो नानुसन्तन्ति मे मतम् सर्वज्ञानविमुद्धमश्च तन् विधि नस्तन् अचिष्यत. Translation: But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not practice them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and doomed to ignorance and bondage. Chapter 3, verse 33. Sadarsham chetas te swayas prakritirjnanapi prakritam yanti bhutani nirgara kim krishyasti. Translation: Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows his nature. What can repression accomplish? Chapter 3, verse 34. Indriya Sendra Yasta Arthe Raga Dvesha Vayasato तयोर्नवसम् अगच्छत् तौहे अस्य परिपन्तेन. Translation: Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings, but one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self realization. Chapter 3, verse 35. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigyana Paradharmat Unusayat Sarva Sarvadharmani Niddanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Translation: It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duty. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Arjun Uvacha Atakena Prayuktoyam Papam Charati Purshaha Anichan Api Vasyena Valat Eva Niyojitaha. Translation: Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one implied to sinful acts even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Chapter 3, verse 37. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Kama Esa Karodesha Raguneya Sambudha Bhava Mahashano Mahapapma Vidya Enam Evarinam. Translation: The Blessed Lord said, It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material modes of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all devouring sinful enemy of this world. Purport: When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his material love for Krishna is transformed into lust. In association with the mode of passion, or in the words, or in the other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust. As milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt, then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is the lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other choleries. If therefore the modes of passion, instead of being degraded into the modes of ignorance, are elevated to the modes of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by the spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever increasing spiritual bliss. And the living entities are parts and parcel of the spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when their service attitude is transformed into the prosperity for sense enjoyment, then come under the sway of lust. The material creation is created by the Lord to give a facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill this lustful propensities, and when they are completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. The inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, Atato Brim Jagyasa, one should inquire into the Supreme, and the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janma Dhyasa Yato Nyayad Itrastu. Cha, or the origin of everything in the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in the other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Rama, engaged his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. Chapter 3, verse 28. धूमेनेर्वित्तेर्वहि नर यथ दर्शो मलिन च यथोभेन वर्तो गर्भस्थ तथा denam avratam. Translation: as fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, similarly, the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. Chapter 3, verse 39. Avratam jnanam etana jnanino nityavarina kamarupena konteya dushpurena lanecha. Translation: thus, a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Chapter 3, verse 40. Indrano mano buddhir asya dosit namichyate eter vimohayate esa jnanam avrata dehinam. Translation: the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust, which veils the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Chapter 3, verse 41. Tasmatvam indrani yadho niyama bhartar sabah papamanam prajahenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Translation: therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, corrupt this great symbol of sin lust by regulating the senses and slay the destroyer of knowledge and self realization. Chapter 3, verse 42. Indrani prani ahura indrayeva param manah manasastu para buddhi yo buddheha parastutsaha. Translation: the working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Chapter 3, verse 43. Evam buddheha param buddhva samstabhayatamanamatmana jahi sastrum mahabaho kamarupam dusradham. Translation: thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind, and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher self and thus the spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Hare Krishna, everyone. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Shri Gauranga Sundasuri. Vanchakalpatarubhasya Vipasindhudeva Chapatinitam Pavaneli Vaishnavi Namo Namaha. Thank you so much, Vijayji. Dhanvat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Vaishnavi Mataji, for helping in the screen sharing. Shubhangi Mataji, next can come.
Radharani Mataji, can you come?
Hare Krishna Mataji, yes Mataji. Hare
Okay.
Krishna Gurudev.
Monalisa Mataji, can you start screen sharing? Vaishnavi Mataji has to leave. Radharani Mataji, till you can read from website or your book. Monalisa Mataji is sharing the screen.
Yes Mataji. Hare Krishna Gurudev Dandavat Pranam Jai Srila Prabhupada Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pasita Deshakarine Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitanena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupakadamam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sachivam Sadhaitam Sadhutam Parishana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Samandita Shri Vishakhavitamsha हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभाष्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Krishna Arjun. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 text 1 Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Pruktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bhavet. The blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashvan, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Purport. Herein we find the history of the Bhagavad Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order, the kings of all planets. The science is especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand it in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from the material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivashvan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Yak Chakshur eva Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Sura Murtir Asesha Teja Yashyagyanya Brahmati Brahmata Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami. Let me worship Lord Brahma, said the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govind, Krishna, who is the original person and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses its orbit in obedience to his order. The sun is the king of the planets, and the sun god, at present of the name Vivashwan, rules the sun planet, which is controlling all other planets by supplying heat and light. He is rotating under the order of Krishna, and Lord Krishna originally made Vivashwan his first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is not therefore a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. In the Mahabharata, Santi Parva uh, 34, 348.5152, we can trace out the history of the Gita as follows. त्रेतायुगादौ च ततो विवस्वान् मनवे ददौ मनश्च लोकभृति अर्थं सुतये क्ष्वाकवे ददौ इक्ष्वाकुना च कथितो व्याप्य लोकान् अवस्थिता. In the beginning of the Treta Yuga, millennium, this science of the relationship with the Supreme was delivered by Vivaswan to Manu. Manu, being the father of mankind, gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth and forefather of the Raghu dynasty, in which Lord Ramchandra appeared. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita existed in the human society from the time of Maharaj Ikshvaku. At the present moment, we have just passed through 5,000 years of the Kali Yuga, which lasts 4,32,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapar Yuga 8 lakh years, and before that, there was Treta Yuga 12 lakh years. Thus, some 20 lakh 5,000 years ago, Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305, 305 lakh 300,000 years, of which 120 lakh 400,000 have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivashwan. A rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120 lakh 400,000 years ago, and in human society it has been extant for 2 million years. It was respoken by the Lord again to Arjun about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita according to the Gita itself and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Sri Krishna. It was spoken to the sun god Vivashwan because he is also a Kshatriya and is the father of all Kshatriyas who are descendants of the sun god or the Surya Vamsha Kshatriyas. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is aparushya, superhuman. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession, and it is described herein that the Lord spoke to the sun god spoke to his son Manu, and Manu spoke to his son Ikshvaku. Text 2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu sa kale neha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. Translation. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Purport. It is clearly stated that the Gita was specially meant for the saintly kings before because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly, Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demonic persons who dissipated its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to re-establish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord Himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore it declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment, also, there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Sri Krishna. This spirit is demonic because demons do not believe in God but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara disciplic succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. Bhagavad Gita is accepted as it is a great boon to humanity, but if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is a simply waste of time. Verse 3. Sa evayam mayate adya yoga prokta purantana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hai etat uttamam. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. There are two classes of men, namely the devotee and the demon. The Lord selected Arjuna as the recipient of this great science owing to his becoming the devotee of the Lord. But for the demon, it is not possible to understand this great mysterious science. There are a number of editions of this great book of knowledge, and some of them have commentaries by the devotees, and some of them have commentaries by the demons. commentation by the devotees is real, whereas that of the demons is useless. Arjun accepts Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and any commentary on the Gita following in the footsteps of Arjun is real devotional service to the cause of this great science. The demonic, however, concoct something about Krishna and mislead the public and general readers from the path of Krishna's instructions. One should try to follow the disciplic succession from Arjun and thus be benefited. Verse 4. Aparam bhavato janma. Verse 4. Arjun uvacha. Aparam bhavato janma param janma vivashvata katham edat vigyaniyam tvam ado proktavan iti. Arjun said, the sun god Vivashwan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understood that in the beginning you instructed these signs to him? Verse 5. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava cha arjuna tani aham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. Translation. The blessed Lord said, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Verse 6. अजो अजोऽपि सन् अव्ययात्मा भूतानाम् ईश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं स्वाम् अधिष्ठाय स्वं भवामि आत्ममायया. Translation. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Purport. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth. Although he may appear like an ordinary person, he remembers everything of his many, many past births, whereas a common man cannot remember what he has done even a few hours before. If someone is asked what he did exactly at the same time one day earlier, it would be very difficult for a common man to answer immediately. He would surely have to dredge his memory to recall what he was doing exactly at the same time one day before, and yet men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. One should not be misled by such meaningless claims. Then again, the Lord explains his Prakriti or his form. Prakriti means nature as well as Svarupa or one's own form. The Lord says that he appears in his own body. He does not change his body as the common living entity changes from one body to another. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different kind of body in the next he has a different body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body, but transmigrates from one body to another. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever he appears, he does so in a same original body by his internal potency. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form with two hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by his material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. Despite the fact Lord Krishna grows from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth, astonishingly enough, he never ages beyond youth. At the time of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home, or, in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculations. Still, he looked just like a young man, 20 or 25 years old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age because he never grows old like us, although he is the oldest person in the whole creation, past, present, and future. Neither his body nor his intelligence never deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is the same unborn eternal form of peace and knowledge, changeless in his transcendental body and intelligence. Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun is set, and when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position, but owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. And because his appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of any ordinary common living entity, it is evident that he is eternal, blissful knowledge by his internal potency, and he is never contaminated by material nature. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unborn, yet he still appears to take his birth in material manifestations. The Vedic supplementary literatures also confirm that even though the Lord appears to be taking his birth, he is still without change of body. In the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayan with four hands and the decorations of the six kinds of full opulences. His appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy. According to the Vivakosh dictionary, the Lord is conscious of all of his previous appearances and disappearances, but a common living entity forgets everything about his past body as soon as he gets another body. He is the Lord of all living entities because he performs wonderful and superhuman activities while he is on this earth. Therefore, the Lord is always the same absolute truth and is without differentiation between his form and self or between his quality and body. A question may now be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world. This is explained in the next verse. Text 7. यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्. Translation. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Purport. The word Srijami is significant herein. Srijami cannot be used in the sense of creation because, according to the previous verse, there is no creation of the Lord's form or body since all of the forms are eternally existent. Therefore, Srijame means that the Lord manifests himself as he is. Although the Lord appears on schedule, namely at the end of Dwapar Yuga of the 28th millennium of the 8th Manu in one day of Brahma, still he has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations because he is completely free to act in many ways at his will. He therefore appears by his own will whenever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and disappearance of true religion. Principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas, and any discrepancy in the matter of properly executing the rules of the Vedas makes one irreligious. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that such principles are the laws of the Lord. Only the Lord can manufacture a system of religion. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord Himself to Brahma from within his heart. Therefore, the principles of Brahma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharmam to Sakshat Bhagavad Pranitam. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad-Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto Him only and nothing more. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto Him, and whenever such principles are disturbed by the demonic, the Lord appears. From the Bhagavatam, we understand that Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Krishna who appeared when materialism was rampant and materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Although there are certain restrictive rules and regulations regarding animal sacrifice for particular purposes in the Vedas, people of demonic tendencies still look to animal sacrifice without reference to the Vedic principles. Lord Buddha appeared to stop this nonsense and to establish the Vedic principles of non-violence. Therefore, each and every avatar or incarnation of the Lord has a particular mission, and they are all described in the revealed scriptures. No one should be accepted as an avatar unless he is referred to by scriptures. It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soul. He can advent himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion. In each and every in each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, and sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. The principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjun and, for that matter, to other highly elevated persons because he was highly advanced compared to ordinary persons in other parts of the world. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a mathematical principle that is true both in the beginner's arithmetic class and in the advanced class as well. Still, there are higher and lower mathematics. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher and lower in varied circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the four orders and the four status of social life, as will be explained later. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnation is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non manifest only under different circumstances. Text 8. परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थाना पार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. Translation. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. According to Bhagavad Gita, a sadhu, holy man, is a man in Krishna consciousness. A person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is to be understood to be a sadhu. And dushkritam applies to one who doesn't care for Krishna consciousness. Such miscreants or dushkritam are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind, even though they may be decorated with mundane education, whereas another person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as sadhu, even though such a person may neither be learned nor well cultured. As far as the atheistic are concerned, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with the demons Ravan and Kamsa. The Lord has many agents who are quite competent to vanquish demons, but the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees who are always harassed by the demonic. The demon harasses the devotee even though the latter may happen to be his kin. Although Prahlad Maharaj was the son of Hiranyakashipu, he was nonetheless persecuted by his father. Although Devki, the mother of Krishna, was the sister of Kamsa, she and her husband Vasudev were persecuted only because Krishna was to be born of them. So Lord Krishna appeared primarily to deliver Devki rather than kill Kamsa, but both were performed simultaneously. Therefore, it is said that to deliver the devotee and vanquish the demon miscreants, the Lord appears in different incarnations. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj, the following verses summarize these principles of incarnation. Srishti hetu he murti prapanche avatare se ishvara murti avatare namadhare maya tita paravyome savara avasthana vishve avatari dhare Avatara Nama. The avatar or incarnation of Godhead descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. And a particular form of the personality of Godhead who so descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. There are various kinds of avatars such as Purush avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Shakyavish avatars, Manvantara avatars, and Yuga avatars, all appearing on schedule all over the universe. But Lord Krishna is the primeval Lord, the fountainhead of all avatars. Lord Sri Krishna descends for the specific purposes of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. Therefore, the prime purpose of the Krishna avatar is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan movement, that is congregational chanting of the holy names, and spread Krishna consciousness throughout India. He predicted that this culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world from town to town and village to village. Lord Chaitanya, as the incarnation of Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is described secretly but not directly in the confidential parts of the revealed scriptures, such as the Upanishads, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, etc. The devotees of Lord Krishna are much attracted by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. This avatar of the Lord does not kill the miscreants, but delivers them by the causeless mercy of the Lord. Text 9. Janma karma cha me divyam Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti. So Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. O Arjun, purport. The Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the sixth verse. One who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is liberated from material bondage, and therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting this present body. Such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. The impersonalist and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti of the Lord, is only partial, and there is a risk of returning again to the material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body and does not run the risk of returning again to this material world. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Lord has many forms and incarnations. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. Although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. As stated in the Vedas, Eko Devo Nitya Lilanukaro Bhakta Vyapi Hriday Antaratma. The one supreme personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the supreme personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting the truth on faith, one can without a doubt attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tattvamasi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, You are the same Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, is certainly liberated instantly. And consequently, his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic assertion. Tam eva vidhi vamritya tam eva vidhi vati mrityumeti nanya pantha vidyate ayanya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no alternative, because anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance. Consequently, he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey, or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed up mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. Text 10. Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Man Maya Man Upashrita Bhavo Jnana Tapasa Uta Mad Bhavam Agata. Translation: being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. In the materialistic concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep this same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic men, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. When they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into the impersonal void. Generally, they compare the living entities to the bubbles of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. These last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. One has to get rid of all three stages of attachment to the material world: negligence of spiritual life, fear of spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that underlies the frustration of life. To get free from these three stages of the material concept of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional life. The last stage of the devotional life is called bhava, or transcendental love of Godhead. According to Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, the science of devotional service, Adav Shraddha Tata Sadhav Sango Atha भजन क्रिया ततो अनर्थ निवृत्ति स्यात् ततो निष्ठा रुचि तत अधासक्ति ततो भावस् तत प्रेमा अभ्युद्यांचते साधकानाम अयम प्रेमना प्रदुर्भावे भवे क्रम. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self realization. This will bring one to the stage of caring to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment, attains steadiness in self realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness, which is matured in bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in a transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations resulting from void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. Text 11. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham mam mama Mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasa. Translation: all of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. All of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestations. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is partially realized in his impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence and as the all pervading Supersoul dwelling within everything, including the particles of atoms. But Krishna is only fully realized by his pure devotees. Consequently, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. In the transcendental world also, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. In the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. One devotee may want Krishna as a supreme master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. Krishna rewards all the devotees equally according to the different intensities of love for him. In the material world, the same reciprocations of feelings are there, and they are equally exchanged by the Lord with the different types of worshippers. The pure devotees, both here and in the transcendental abode, associate with him in person and are able to render personal service to the Lord and thus derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. As for those who are impersonalists and who want to commit spiritual suicide by annihilating the individual existence of the living entity, Krishna helps also by absorbing them into his effulgence. Such impersonalists do not agree to accept the eternal blissful personality of Godhead. Consequently, they cannot relish the bliss of transcendental personal service to the Lord, having extinguished their individuality. Some of them who are not situated even in the impersonal existence return to this material field to exhibit their dormant desire for activities. They are not admitted in the spiritual planets. They are not admitted in the spiritual planets, but they are again given a chance to act on the material planets. For those who are fruitive workers, the Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties as the Yagneshwar, and those who are yogis seeking mystic powers are awarded such powers. In other words, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone, and all kinds of spiritual processes are but different degrees of success on the same path. Unless, therefore, one comes to the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, all attempts remain imperfect as it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tiverena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is without desire, the condition of the devotees, or is desirous of all fruitive results, or is after liberation, one should with all efforts try to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead for complete perfection, culminating in Krishna consciousness. Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Text 12. Kanushita karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devata Shipram hi manushe loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. Translation: man in this world desires success in fruitive activities and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, man gets results from fruitive work in this world. Text 13. चतुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागश तस्य कर्तारम् अपि मां विद्धि अकर्तारम् अव्ययम्. According to the three modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the four divisions of human society were created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. The Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of Him, everything is sustained by Him, and everything after annihilation rests in Him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Shudras or laborer class are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate man from the animal status, the above mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man toward work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life according to different modes of material nature are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas because a Brahmana by quality is supposed to know about Brahman, the supreme absolute truth. Most of them approach the impersonal Brahman manifestation of Lord Krishna, but only a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and reaches the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different planetary expansions of Krishna, namely Ram, Narsimha, Vara, etc. However, as Krishna is transcendental to this system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nations, or species. Text 14. न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्म फले स्पृहा इति मां यभिजानन्ति कर्माभिः न स बध्यते. Translation. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. Text 15. इवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वे अपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मेष्व तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वे पूर्वतरं कृतम्. Translation. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding and so attained liberation. Therefore, as the ancients, you should perform your duty in this divine consciousness. Text 16. किम कर्म किम अकर्मेति कवयो अपि अत्र मोहिता तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यत् ज्ञात्वा मोक्षस्य शुभात्. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all sins. Text 17. Karmano hai api buddhavyam cha vikarmana akarmanascha buddhavyam gahana karmano gati. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. Text 18. कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान मनुष्येषु स युक्त कृच्छ्ना कर्म कृत. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. Text 19. यस्य सर्वे समारंभ कर्म संकल्प वर्जिता ज्ञानाग्नि दग्ध कर्माणां तम आहो पंडितां बुद्धा. One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every act is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker whose fruitive action is burnt up by the fire of perfect knowledge. 20. त्यक्त्वा कर्म फलासंगम नित्य तृप्तो निराश्रय कर्माणि अभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किंचित करोति स. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. 21. निराशीर यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्त्वा सर्व परिग्रह शरीरम केवलम कर्म कुर्वम napnoti kilbisham. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. 22. यद्रच्छा लाभ संतुष्टो द्वंद्वातीतो विमाशतर समसिद्धा असिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of his own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady both in success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. 23. Gata sangasya muktasya jnanva vasthita chetasa yagya chattara karma samagram pravilyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. 24. Brahma parpanam Brahma haver Brahmagno Brahmana hutam Brahmeva tena gantavyam Brahma karma samadhina. Translation: a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual name. 25. Devam eva pare yagnam yogina paryupashate brahmagnav apare yagnam yagnenav wo pahudpati. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. 26. श्रोत्रादीनीन्द्रियाणि अन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयान् अन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति. Some of them sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the controlled mind, and others sacrifice the objects of the senses such as sound in the fire of sacrifice. 27. Sarva indriya karmani prana karmani chapare Atma Samyama Yogagno Juhati Jnana Dipite. Those who are interested in self-realization in terms of mind and sense control offer the functions of all senses as well as the vital force breath as obligations into the fire of the controlled mind. 28. Dravya Yagnas Tapo Yagna Yoga Yagnas Tatha Pare Swadhyaya Jnana Yagyascha Yataya Samshita Vrata. There are others who, enlightened by sacrificing their material possessions, in severe austerities, take strict vows and practice the yoga of eightfold mysticism, and others study the Vedas for the advancement of transcendental knowledge. 29. Apane juvati pranam prane panam tatha pare prana pana gati rudva pranayama parayana apare niyata hara pranam praneshu juvati. And there are even others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, and they practice stopping the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Some of them, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into self as a sacrifice. 13. सर्वे अपि एते यज्ञ विदो यज्ञ क्षपित कल्मषा यज्ञ शिष्टामृत भुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reaction, and having tasted the nectar of the remnants of such sacrifice, they go to the supreme eternal atmosphere. 31. Nayam loko asti ayagnashya kuto anya kurukshatama. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? 32. Evam bahu vidha yagna vitata brahmano mukhe karma jan viditan sarvan evam gyatva vimokshase. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Text 33. Shreyan dravya mayad yagna jnana yagna parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane pari samaptyate. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Pritha, after all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. Text 34. तद्विधि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनास्तत्त्वदर्शिनः. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. But the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord Himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following these principles of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharman hi sakshat Bhagavan pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In these words, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should not only hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind towards the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries become perfect. 35. यद ज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम एवं यश्यसि पांडव येन भूतानि अशेषानि दृक्ष्वा से आत्मनि अथोमयि. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. The result of receiving knowledge from a self, sorry, Text 36. अपि चे असि पापेभ्य सर्वेभ्य पापकृतमा सर्वं ज्ञान प्लवेनैव वृजिनां संतरिष्यसि. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the oceans of miseries. 37. यथैदांशी समेदो अग्निर्भस्मासत् कुरुते अर्जुन ज्ञाननाग्नि सर्वकर्माणि भस्मासात् kurute tatha. As the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjun, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. 38. Nahi jnanena sadrasham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddhi kalena netmani vindati. In this world there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. 39. Shraddha va labate jnanam tatpara samyendriya jnanam labdva param santim achire naadi gachati. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. 40. अज्ञास च अश्रद्धा धानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोको अस्ति न परो न सुखम संशयात्मना. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. 4.1. योग संन्यास्त कर्माणाम ज्ञानवा सांचित संशयम आत्मवंतम न कर्माणि निबदन्ति धनंजय. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by words, O conqueror of riches. 42. तस्मात् अज्ञान संभूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञाननासीनात्मना चित्वैनं संशयं योगम अस्तितोषित Bharata. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purpose to the fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of transcendental knowledge. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All glories to His Grace Gaurang Sundar Gurudev. All glories to His Grace Gaurang Sundar Gurudev. All glories to His Grace Gaurang Sundar Gurudev. Vanchakalpatarubhashyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you for the seva opportunity. Please forgive me for all of my mistakes. Hare Krishna. Subhangi Mataji, you can call the next person. Ruchika Mataji, you can come next.
Next, who wants to come? Yes, Monalisa Mataji. Okay. Hare Krishna Gurudev, Tandur Pranam, Cheshla Prabhupada, Jai Sri Gauranga Sudatas Gurudev. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादे पाश्चात्येषु ओम अज्ञानति मिरान्तस्य ज्ञानञ्जलशलाकया चक्षुमीलितं मेन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं मेन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदामयं दत्ते स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुश्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुवैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगं रघुनाथं मुतं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं भजन श्रेष्ठं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादं सकलललिता श्रीविशाखान्तांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पति गोपीश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमस्ते तप्तकाञ्चन गौरांग राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी विश्वानुसुतदेवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय मुझे कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधु भयवच पद्मं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे All goes to Srila Prabhupada, all goes to his face, Gauranga Sundardas Gurudev. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 1. Arjuna Vacha, Sanyasasyam Karmano Krishna Puna Yogam Cha Samsasi Yachreya Etayorokam Tanmay Vuhi Sunishritam. Translation. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommended work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" Chapter 5, verse 2. Shri Bhagavanovacha Sanyasasyam karmanogya ni shreya vyubho tayosyaktu karma samyasatta karma yogo ya vishayashyate. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works." Chapter 5, verse 3. येने स नित्य संन्यासी यो न द्विष न कांक्षति निर्द्वंदो हि महाबाहो सुख्यम बंध्यत प्रमुच्यते. Translation. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcome material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Chapter 5, verse 4. Sankhya Yogo Prathag Bala Pradvanti Na Pandita ekam ape asthita samyak ubhyor vindate phalam. Translation: only the ignorant speaks of karma yoga and devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Chapter 5, verse 5. Yat Sankhya Praptes Dinam Tad Yoger Api Gamyate Ekam Sankyam Cha Yogyam Cha Ya Pashyati Sa Pashyati. Translation: one who knows that the position reached by means of renunciation can also be attained by works in devotional service, and who therefore sees that the path of works and the path of renunciation are one, sees things as they are. Chapter 5, verse 6. Sanyasasyastu mahabaho dukham apetum ayogyata yoga yukto munir brahma na chirang agita gachyati. Translation: unless one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, mere renunciation of activities cannot make one happy. The sages, purified by works of devotional devotion, achieves the supreme without delay. Bhagavad-GITA, chapter 5, verse 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijayatma jitendriya sarva bhutatma bhutatma kuru, kuru, kurvantayapi na lipyate. Translation: one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Chapter 5, verse 8 and 9. Neva kinchit karotmiti yukto manyate tat tatvavit pashyan shrinevan sparshan chitratan asnan gachan swapan shwasan pralapan visarjan grahatan उन्मिषान् निमिषान् अपि इन्द्रियाण्येति इन्द्रियस्तेषु वर्तन इति धार्यान्. Translation: a person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their object and that he is aloof from them. Chapter 5, verse 10. ब्रह्मण्य अध्याय कर्माणि संगम त्यक्त्वा कृतिज्ञ लिप्यते